So retirement is not in your plans.
Oh no, that's a dirty word. People always say, very often they'll say to me, "Why don't you retire?" Um, and I often think, to do what?
Stan Lee, the former president and chairman of Marvel Comics, is credited with co creating iconic characters such as Spider Man, the Hulk, the Fantastic Four, and Thor. And at 90 years old, he's not finished yet. I sat down with Stan Lee and one of his business partners, Gill, to learn about their company, POW Entertainment, which develops television, gaming, and film properties, and Stan Lee's appearances at shows like Comic Con and Comikaze Expo. You've created this company, and I think the last time we talked was around 2010, and it was a young company. I see now that you have an upcoming film adaptation called Annihilator. You're breaking into film.
Well, we're doing that with a Chinese company, and it's the first big budget, important motion picture that stars a Chinese star, but it's not a Chinese movie, it's a movie for the whole world. Part of it takes place in China, part of it takes place in the United States, and we hope that it'll do as well as the regular Marvel movies like the Avengers and Iron Man.
What inspired you to go to China? Just the 1.4 billion people?
No, it was greed. I no, that's what we do here at POW. We come up with new ideas for movies, for television shows, for books, whatever. And we had this idea for a movie, a typical superhero, the kind I've done before, but I think with a totally different twist. Decided to call him the Annihilator. And we're very excited about it.
And you have your own comic convention too, which is great because you're a star all the time at Comic Con, but you have Comikaze, which brings people together on its own now.
We decided that Los Angeles needs its own comic book convention. So I got together with some people and we formed Stan Lee's Comikaze convention, comic book convention. The funny thing, these conventions are becoming more than just comic book conventions. They're really becoming entertainment conventions because so much of the movie business, television, the internet, music, sports, everything that entertains people is in these conventions, especially in the Stan Lee Comikaze convention. You can see I don't try to plug my own things at all.
But the whole multimedia experience is really giving you more platforms for your work. Has it been hard to adapt to the changes?
No, not at all, because if you really think about it, the thing that I and people like me do are we try to create things that'll entertain the public. And it doesn't matter what form of the media you're working in, you're doing the same thing. You're trying to be entertaining. And you use the same philosophy, the same rules. You try to come up with characters that people will be interested in, and you try to give those characters fascinating things to do.
And how has your job changed? Or is it pretty much the same because the core still is the entertainment, as you said?
The job is the same. It's just I seem to get busier all the time. I work with my partner, Gill, who handles the business, really the important part of the company. And every day he makes me busier than the day before. I'm going to kill the man.
But, the young generation, I mean, you're a rock star at these conventions, and the young people know you. Are they different than they were before? I mean, how do you relate to this generation and get them to be so excited about what you're doing?
I don't really know how to answer that. I relate to everybody the same, whether I'm talking to somebody like you, who's erudite and knowledgeable, or whether I'm talking to some kid who's just stumbled onto comic books and movies. It's the same thing. You try to give as much information as you can in as amusing a way as possible. And there are no rules. It's just if you're in the entertainment business, you've got to be entertaining and you've got to do things that are entertaining. So that's what you try to do.
So at its core, it's still storytelling.
Oh, everything is storytelling. Absolutely right.
You have an animated movie, Mighty Seven.
That's right. Stan Lee's Mighty Seven.
This is for early 2014.
Bless you for saying that. We think of this as the world's first reality comic book and animated series because I'm actually in it as a character. And, I've done these cameos in
Yeah,
movies,
oh, tons.
but now in this book and in this cartoon movie, I'm one of the characters, and we're going to introduce other real people. See, because I'm also a real person. Some people may not believe that. But we're going to introduce other real people. So it'll be a reality comic book, even though it's a superhero themed comic book. And it's a little hard to describe. It is so wonderful, there's no way to put it into words.
One thing that's sure is as you look at a lot of the businesses in entertainment are expanding and trying to figure out how to get to China, how to get to India, which is another big
You take a
movie
plane,
industry.
it's easy as pie.
And Chakra is a character that is actually set in Mumbai.
Yeah, well, we didn't want to show favoritism and just be good to the Chinese. So we thought we'll come up with an Indian superhero also. We have some friends in India, and we were talking about this. So we came up with this character, Chakra, who is another superhero, but he happens to be Indian. That's the nation of India. We'll get around to the American Indians later on, because I have some ideas for them too. But Chakra is, I think, an unusual character. It's a first for us, our first Indian superhero. We're quite excited about him.
Obviously, you're a legendary figure who started out defining and innovating in America with these characters. But you have a globalization strategy, it seems like. What is it that has opened your mind to expanding into these other countries?
Well, first of all, I love you for saying, obviously, I'm a legendary figure. I've got to remember that and tell my wife. I realized as the years went on, we get fan mail from every country in the world, and I'm invited to speak in Spain, in Brazil, in Japan, all over. So if we're reaching people all over the world, we might as well try to do things that will have something to do with those people. I plan to have here at POW Entertainment a Latino superhero, an American Indian superhero. We're going to have certainly a black superhero. We're going to have, at Marvel, we have the Black Panther, and we have a magician, Dr. Strange, that we're working on. And now we're going to have a Chinese superhero, an Indian superhero. And if there are any countries that we haven't mentioned now, we'll get to them.
When you look at Fortune 500 companies and they go into a place like China, they always have a joint venture partner that demystifies the cultural nuances of that region. How do you relate to the cultural nuances? How do you stay relevant in different parts of the world?
Well, I'm not the greatest authority on all the cultural nuances of these countries, but whenever we get started, I become very friendly with our co-producers or the people we work with. I've made many friends among the Chinese people that we work with. We have lunch together. They come here and we talk, and I find out what are they interested in, what would they like to see. The same with our Indian friends and so forth. So it's quite easy. I cannot do it unless I meet the people and get to know them and find out what they would hope to see as the result of our project.
Do you find it to be incredibly different in the different places, or is it pretty much the core is still the storytelling?
You said that very well. It really is the same core all over. No matter what the country is, no matter what the region of the world is, you have a hero that you care about, that you admire. He has to be in some sort of trouble. He has to have a mission that he has to perform for the good of the people, and it's difficult for him to do it because of certain obstacles in his way. You have to get the reader or the audience hooked on this character so they care about him, and so they want to see how he will brush those obstacles out of the way and emerge victorious. And it's the same formula ever since fairy tales were invented. It's the same as Jack and the Beanstalk. It's the good guy versus the bad guy, and the good guy doesn't seem to have a chance. But if the writer is clever enough, the good guy will win.
It's a very literary approach in an era in which our kids are less literate than they once were because of technology and a lot of there's not as much of a need to be writing stories and things like that. How do you get the young people engaged in the craft of comic books?
Well, that's a difficult one because reading and writing is changing. Even because of texting, after a while, words are going to be spelled differently because so many young people and older people are using shortcuts in the spelling of words.
LOL.
Exactly. And after a while, those shortcuts will become the way the word is spelled or the phrase is spelled. So there's not much I can do about that, or anybody can do about it. And it may not be a bad thing, but the important thing is at POW, we try to be riding the tide with whatever the changes are. We go along with them. It isn't as important to get children to read certain type of words as it is to get them to read. And whether they're reading on their computer or their iPhone or what it is, as long as they're getting information through a printed word and getting information through a voice, through speech, through hearing something in a movie, on the radio, on television, whatever it is, because the human brain spends 24 hours a day sopping up information. And that's the important thing. I don't think reading, it's a terrible thing to say because I'm a reader, and to me reading was the most important thing in the world. I don't think reading will be as important in decades to come as it has been. I think people will get most of their information through a screen and through listening to it.
And so it's much more interactive and engaging.
And that may be a good thing. The interactivity may be, I don't know. I'm not a sociologist, I can't predict. But if people become more involved with what their entertainment is, it may be a good thing.
Are you happy with the state of the comic industry right now?
You mean the comic book industry?
Yeah.
I don't even think about it that much. I know that all I know about is the company I'm involved with, Marvel, and they're publishing some wonderful books that are selling very well. And almost every one of them, it looks like this could make a great motion picture, and they probably will. Comic books may end up selling a little bit less than they did because people would rather see it in the movie or see it on the internet in a graphic type of thing that moves, a digital comic. But I think there will always be comic books. They're sort of the wellspring from which these other things evolve.
Did you think it would get this big?
Never.
The first time I met you at Comic-Con, it was crazy. I mean, just to see everybody in these incredible costumes and just the level of engagement and all of the different seminars and programs that people participated in. It was fascinating.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, now something new has happened. This past year, people have asked me to sign my name on their arm or their shoulder or somewhere so they could tattoo it. I mean, that really boggles my mind.
I just relate to so much of what Stan Lee writes.
Peter Parker reminds me of myself.
Learn to read because of Spider-Man comics.
We love you, Stan!
How does he do it? I mean, how in terms of his age and just being able to stay relevant.
There's 4 generations of fans that have followed him. Often he'll have an opportunity to talk to a grandfather who read his material, a father, the son, and now even the grandson. So he's very much attracted to and tuned to youth and what youth is looking at, what youth desires, what some of their wants might be, and it's very unusual. It's always a growing process and continuing looking at what's new means of creating, new means of distribution, and how to reach that consumer audience. My personal goal is to propel Stan's legacy, not unsimilar to somebody, although I'm not comparing him to Walt Disney, but certainly the success is to live on for generations to come. And that legacy will now include a worldwide legacy based upon the number of projects we're doing internationally and the number of friends we've made. In fact, I think alone this year out of China, Stan's probably found about 250,000 new relatives with the same last name as he. So there's going to be a lot of Christmas cards he's going to have to write.
And it's also very important that the character has the type of qualities that will appeal to and be understood by people all over the world.
What's left?
Oh, I hope more movies, television series. We're working, I spent this afternoon with my partner Gill. We went to Showtime, we went to other networks. We have some television shows that we're pitching. And that's the fun of it. If you can just keep going and coming up with new ideas, and if you're lucky, some of them may hit, and I think it keeps you excited and stimulated, and it's just fun.
So retirement is not in your plans?
Oh no, that's a dirty word. You know, people always say, very often they'll say to me, why don't you retire? And I often think, to do what? When people retire, they usually say, now at last I can play golf or I can do whatever. I'm doing what I want to do. So if I retired, I'd want to come right back and do what I'm doing.
Great advice, Stan Lee. And I appreciate you.
Hey, you're a great interviewer.
Oh,
Jeez,
man,
I
I'm
chewed
working
your
on
ear off for crying out.
And with Stan Lee, I'm Lee Hawkins. We'll see you next time.
So many big writers want to write comics because they suspect if they write a really good comic book, it may turn into a movie at some point.
I wanted to be a race car driver, but I didn't have any money, so I need money to do that. And so when somebody in New York then told me, we have a job offer for you if you want in Indianapolis. So that was in 1974, and I said, I'm going to Indianapolis.